Most attributes are a double-edged sword that bring potential benefits and potential harm. The more extreme the attribute, the more extreme the potential good or bad outcomes it's likely to produce. Principles by Ray Dalio. Looking forward to a reading for you this morning. And we are up to part A of 4.1, understanding the power that comes from knowing how you and others are wired. Let's get into it. It's the start of a great new week. I'm looking forward to achieving lots of good things goals-wise. I have my goals written out for the week. I've got my days written out with the plans for the week. And now it's time to do some reading for you. Okay, so let's get started. We are born with attributes that can both help us and hurt us depending on their application. Most attributes are a double-edged sword that bring potential benefits and potential harm. The more extreme the attribute, the more extreme the potential good or bad outcomes it's likely to produce. For example, a highly creative, goal-oriented person good at imagining new ideas might undervalue the minutiae of daily life, which is also important. He might be so driven in his pursuit of long-term goals that he might have disdain for people who focus on the details of daily life. Similarly, a task-oriented person who is great with details might undervalue creativity, and worse still, may squelch it in the interests of efficiency. These two people might make a great team, but are likely to have trouble taking advantage of the ways they're complementary, because the way their minds work make it difficult for them to see the value of each other's ways of thinking. So absolutely true. There are so many different types of personalities and ways in which we can clash with each other, but also ways in which we can complement each other and use each other's skills and abilities to be able to succeed together. And sometimes it's just a question of being able to figure that out so that you can use those skills in a way that they don't clash with each other, and so that you can achieve twice as much as that you otherwise would with just your own personality. So really, really good things to keep in mind. In the meantime, quickly, we got quite a few people who've joined. We've got Fred Willard, Nottingham Playhouse. I think we've seen you before. Nicholas, a Winding reference. Very good, thank you. And Pocket Rumble, Keenan, a couple of really amazing people. Thank you for joining. Let's continue with Ray Dalio principles. Having expectations for people, including yourself, without knowing what they are like is a sure way to get in trouble. I learned this the hard way through years of frustrating conversations and the pain of expecting things from people who were constitutionally incapable of delivering them. I'm sure that I caused them plenty of pain too. Over time, I realized that I needed a systematic approach to capturing and recording our differences so that we could actively take them into consideration when putting people into different roles at Bridgewater. This led me to one of the most valuable management tools, baseball cards, which I mentioned in the first part of this book. Just as a baseball card compiles the relevant data on a baseball player, helping fans know what that player is good and bad at, I decided it would be similarly helpful for us to have cards for all of our players at Bridgewater. In creating the attributes for our baseball cards, I used a combination of adjectives we already use to describe people, like conceptual, reliable, creative, and determined. The actions people took or didn't take, such as holding others accountable and pushing through to results, the terms from personality tests such as extroverted or judging. Once the cards were established, I created the process to have people evaluate each other. With the people rated highest in each dimension, most creative, for example, having more weight on the ratings of other people in that dimension. People with proven track records in a certain area would get more believability or decision-making weight within that area. By recording these qualities in people's baseball cards, others who'd never worked with them before could know what to expect from them. When people changed, their rating would change. And when they didn't change, we were even more sure of what we could expect of them. Naturally, when I introduced this tool, people were skeptical or scared of it for various reasons. Some were afraid that the cards would be inaccurate. Others thought it would be uncomfortable to have their weaknesses made so apparent, or that it would lead to their being pigeonholed inhibiting their growth. Still others thought it would be too complex to be practical. Imagine how you would feel if you were asked to force rank all your colleagues on creativity, determination, or reliability. Most people at first find that prospect frightening. Interesting, because I actually had to do this when I was at university. So at university, I had a different type of learning. So our school, our university, had something called PBL, problem-based learning, and we were the first, probably one of the first places to implement it ever. And it was fascinating. So we not only didn't have like lectures and different things like this as much, unless it was cooking lessons, because I studied hospitality management. So we learned some cooking, we learned how to manage marketing, all of those fun things. But we didn't have lectures. What would happen is twice a week, we'd have a class in which it was a group of people, and it was like a business boardroom. And we would go in and we would have a problem presented to us. And as a team, we had to figure out a solution to that problem that we all agreed with, and eventually we worked on it together. But it wasn't the teacher telling us how it worked or past experiences or case studies like that. It was us coming up with solutions to this problem. So it could be, for example, a tourist boat company. And this tourist boat company was not doing very well. And so they had this issue, that issue. And so it went through the actual circumstances. And then we had to come up with a solution on how to get more tourists to take this boat, how to expand the business, how to do X, Y, Z, how to overcome a death on the boat, for example. So we had all of these different scenarios that could happen in real life, and we had to come up with our own ways of dealing with them. So if somebody fell overboard and died, what would we do to be able to make sure that we minimize the damage and we're able to get the business to continue on after that? So it was really, really fascinating, and I enjoyed it a lot. But in essence, it's similar to what Ray Dalio is doing here. And a lot of people are going to be frightened of it. But in essence, when I did this at university, I ended up finding that it was extremely valuable and nothing to be afraid of at all. Now, obviously, I got thrown in the deep end, so it was quite easy for me, and I was very open to the idea. But if you have a company, it could be extremely valuable for you to do something similar, and you just need to make sure that you get your staff on board. So for change management, you want to make sure that you are completely open and transparent with everybody. And you want to make sure that you explain why it is going to be beneficial and how you are going to protect everybody's privacy. The more open and honest you are about the process, the more people will be on board with it, which is what you really want to be able to do. And if somebody is going to request of you that you give your information so that everybody can understand you better, I would say don't worry about it and just go for it, because it is going to allow you to have a much smoother and better interaction with your colleagues than you otherwise would have, and also with your boss. So I would say nothing to be afraid of. I've already done it, and it's never had any negative consequences for me. So I would highly, highly recommend it. Let's continue. Still, I knew that we needed to be radically open in recording and considering what people were like, and that things would eventually evolve to address people's concerns if we are sensible about how we approach the process. Today, most everyone at Bridgewater finds these baseball cards to be essential, and we've built a whole suite of other tools which will be further described in work principles to support our drive to understand what people are like and who is believable at what. I've already noted that our unique way of operating and the treasure trove of data we accumulated brought us to the attention of some world-renowned organizational psychologists and researchers. Bob Keegan of Harvard University, Adam Grant of the Wharton School, and Ed Hess of the University of Virginia have written about us extensively, and I have learned a great deal from them in turn. In a way I never intended, our trial and error discovery process has put us at the cutting edge of academic thinking about personal development within organizations. As Keegan wrote in his book, An Everyone Culture, from the individual experience of probing in every one-on-one meeting to the technologically integrated processes for discussing issues and baseball cards to the company-wide practices of daily updates and cases, Bridgewater has built an ecosystem to support personal development. The system helps everyone in the company confront the truth about what everyone is like. Now, there are lots of different companies like Bridgewater who do amazing things. And it's not going to be necessary for you to do exactly what Bridgewater does. But what I do believe is that it's important to be innovative. And different companies do different things. So Bridgewater has the personal development aspect. And that is extremely powerful for Bridgewater. If you have a look at a company like Gore-Tex, very fascinating. And Gore-Tex actually has a system whereby they open up a factory, and then once they reach 150 workers, they don't expand any further. They will get a new factory and start another 150. Also, staff do not have titles, so they are just employees of the company, and nobody has a hierarchy. And that works extremely well for Gore-Tex. Gore-Tex uses the principle, which is interesting because they don't have a hierarchy, even though the military uses a hierarchy. But they use the military principle of not going above 150. So you'll see that battalions or units and different other things are generally about 150 people. And the reason for that is because 150 seems to be the amount of people that we can interact with and still know them on a personal level. So if there are more than 150 people in your organization, you are only going to really get to know 150 of them well enough to be able to communicate openly with them. Because otherwise, the other number of people, you're not going to really know them well enough. You're going to be distrusting. You're not going to understand them well enough. So if you keep the company smaller, it is better. And in a way, that could also have been used in Bridgewater in order to be able to make sure that people understood each other without necessarily having the baseball cards. But I think cross-pollination would have been really amazing for both companies. So if Bridgewater kept all of its little entities to 150 people, and if it was to also have the baseball cards, and if Gore-Tex kept to its 150 as it already did, and then add the baseball cards, I think both companies would be even more brilliant than they already are. But the point being that it doesn't really matter what it is that you do. The idea is that you want to be able to come up with innovative ideas and think about, how can I make things better for my staff? How can we be more efficient? How can we do all of these different things? And I always find that when you sit down and meditate on or think about or take time for answering questions like these, that's when you truly build a really amazing company. And that reminds me of some things that I am just thinking of right now that I am going to write down. So I meditate every morning, and I already do this to a degree, but I wrote down that I want to ask more questions around how to get certain things achieved in the business before my day starts. So that is something that I will be implementing, also based off of the learnings from here. Let's continue with the next part of the book. Our journey of discovery has coincided with an incredibly fertile epoch in neuroscience, when, thanks to rapid advances in brain imaging and the ability to gather and process big data, our understanding has accelerated dramatically. As with all sciences on the cusp of breakthroughs, I am sure that much of what is thought to be true today will soon be radically improved. But what I do know is how incredibly beautiful and useful it is to understand how the thinking machine between our ears works. Here's some of what I've learned. The brain is even more complex than we can imagine. It has an estimated 89 billion tiny computers called neurons that are connected to each other through many trillions of wires called axons and chemical synapses. As David Eagleman describes it in his wonderful book Incognito, your brain is built of cells called neurons and glia, and hundreds of billions of them. Each one of them is as complex as a city. The cells are connected in a network of such staggering complexity that it bankrupts human language and necessitates new strains of mathematics. A typical neuron makes about 10,000 connections to neighboring neurons. Given billions of neurons, that means that there are as many connections in a single cubic centimeter of brain tissue as there are stars in the Milky Way galaxy. When we are born, our brains are programmed with learning accumulated over hundreds of millions of years. For example, researchers at the University of Virginia have shown that while many people have an intrinsic fear of snakes, no one has an instinctual fear of flowers. The brains that we are born with have learned that snakes are dangerous and flowers are not. There's a reason for that. This is one grand design for the brains of all mammals, fish, birds, amphibians, and reptiles, which was established nearly 300 million years ago and has been evolving ever since. Just as cars have evolved into different versions, sedans, SUVs, sports cars, etc., that rely on many of the same underlying parts, all vertebrate brains have similar parts that do similar things, but that are well adapted to the needs of their own particular species. For example, birds have superior optical lobes because they need to spot prey and predators from great heights, while we humans think of ourselves as superior overall because we overemphasize the importance of our own advantages. Other species could justifiably make the same claims on their own behalf. Birds for flight, eyesight, and instinctual magnetic navigation. Most animals for smell, and several for appearing to have particularly enjoyable sex. This universal brain has evolved from the bottom up, meaning that its lower parts are evolutionarily the oldest and the top parts are the newest. The brainstem controls the subconscious process that keeps us and other species alive. Heartbeat, breathing, nervous system, and our degree of arousal and alertness. The next layer up, the cerebellum, gives us the ability to control our limb movements by coordinating sensory input with our muscles. Then comes the cerebrum, which includes the basal ganglia, which controls habitat, and other parts of the limbic system, which controls emotional responses and some movement, and the cerebral cortex, which is where our memories, thoughts, and sense of consciousness reside. The newest and most advanced parts of the cortex, that wrinkled mass of gray matter that looks like a bunch of intestines, is called the neocortex, which is where learning, planning, imagination, and other high-level thoughts come from. It accounts for a significantly higher ratio of the brain's gray matter than is found in the brains of other species. There we go, and that brings us to 4.2. And on a final note, it is very important to realize how our brains work and what it is capable of doing. The more you understand, the more in control you are of something. So, as we've discussed earlier, when it comes to, for example, his name eludes me for a second. Wow, that is what gets measured gets managed. Peter Drucker, there we go. Peter Drucker said what gets measured gets managed, which is very important. So if you don't believe or if you don't agree that you are overweight, then of course you are not going to do anything about it. But if you do acknowledge that you're overweight, then you can start to do something about it. So you measure it. So you see what your weight is to start off with. You can see if you're improving or if you're going backwards, if you're gaining weight or losing weight. And it's the same with understanding of the brain. The more you understand it, the more you understand how it functions, the more in control you are of it. Now, it says in life that there is no program for our life, like no instruction on how it works. There's also no instruction manual for the brain or how our lives work. However, evolutionarily, we do have certain things in our brain that make it, I suppose, instinctive for us to know certain things. And that is really, really good. But the more you learn and study about the brain, the more you're going to be able to understand it and therefore control it and therefore get the outcomes that you want. And that is what Ray Dalio is talking about, and not just today for yourself, but in this case also about the team. The more you understand the people that you work with, how they tick, how they are wired, why certain things happen, the more in control you are of the situation so that you can make adjustments. And that's where we are going to be leaving it today. So if you enjoyed that, and I hope you did, then you can find the recordings as well if you only joined today. And if you'd like to get some other chapters that you'd like to watch, if you'd like to watch from the start, for example, you can find them all on the Passive Cash Flow Club, which is our YouTube channel. So feel free to go across there and subscribe and have a look at other videos. We also read Rich Dad Poor Dad and The Art of Thinking Clearly, and we're going to be reading Fake After Principles, but Principles might still take a while. It is quite a thick book. Also, make sure that you subscribe, because we also take your questions and turn them into videos with answers. So if you have a question around finance or economics, or you have a question about the book, or there's something that you're not sure about investing or wealth creation, then you can ask, and we are happy to turn that into a video for you. And yes, that's why you want to make sure that you subscribe, because if you subscribe, then if you did ask a question, yeah, you'll know when that question has been uploaded. And if you have not asked a question, that's completely fine. But you never know. It might be a question that's been uploaded that you find out about, and that happens to be one that is extremely useful and valuable for you. So if that is the case, make sure that you subscribe on YouTube. So if you'd like to ask a question, if there is something that you are unsure of, then make sure, and I'm just a little bit distracted because the video has a glow stick, I think, that somebody has sent through. So I really appreciate that. So thank you, Madison. Yes, so if you do have a question, or if you'd like to get in touch with me, and I would love to get to know more of you, because I see you on the other side of the screen, and you can send me little hearts and envelopes and different other things. But I would love to really get to know you. And if you'd like to get in touch, you can do that at Instagram, and you can find me at business_team_6_official. And you can check out my Instagram, obviously, but you can also DM me, and you can let me know if you're interested in any of the things that we run. So we have networking events, we have simulations, we have games, we have masterminds, we have all sorts of different things that we have in place in order to be able to help you become a better investor. And you can also ask your questions. So if you have a question that you'd like uploaded onto YouTube, just send me through your question, and we can do it anonymously, or we can put your name if you like, and we can answer your question. And yeah, I'm sure it will help everybody in the community, so that we can get some of the most common questions and some of the most common challenges sorted for you with regards to wealth creation, economics, the books, and everything else that we discuss here. So thank you so much for joining. I am going to stop the recording in just a second, and then I'm going to jump over to the Bigo and say hello to everybody that joined. And yes, I hope you enjoyed today's part of Ray Dalio's Principles. I am looking forward to seeing you all. That was strange. Light changed on my other computer. That's okay. I'm looking forward to seeing you all tomorrow for another reading at 8 a.m. Sydney time. Have an absolutely amazing day. Make sure you go out and achieve some really great things towards your goals. And I'll see you tomorrow, and look forward to hearing from as many of you as possible on Instagram, business_team_6_official. And yeah, have a great day. And remember to make the switch to unlock your rich, because if you make that switch, then you're going to unlock that rich. Doing the same thing is going to get you the same result. Doing things differently, and there are always more efficient and quicker ways of doing them. So make that switch, and you will unlock your rich.